Good afternoon or good morning. Welcome to all who are joining us. I see folks are coming in, so just give it a couple seconds as folks are logging on. Thank you so much for joining us today for this important conversation. Welcome, welcome. I'm seeing our numbers going up. So as folks are starting to log in, thank you all so much for your time and engagement with us today here at Excelencia in Education for this important and timely conversation on 30 years of Hispanic-serving institutions, improving access to quality for 30%. It's my pleasure to be here with you all today. My name is Emily Lavandera. I am Director of Research here at Excelencia, and I'm just going to share a few quick logistic items with you all before we get started. We know that there are so many of you joining us today. I see our participant numbers rising as I speak. So please do say hello in the chat, share where you are joining us. We know there are folks across the country joining us today. We'd love to see where you're joining from. And we have so much to share with you all. And as you can see, we have an esteemed panel with us here today as well. So any questions that you all might have, if you look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see a Q&A box. Please do share any questions that come up in there. Our team will be capturing those as our discussion today progresses, and we'll make sure if there's time at the end to tackle them, and if not, after the webinar. But we really do want to hear from you all as well. As you may have seen, we will be recording this webinar, and if you happen to experience any technical issues at all, please do reach out to us, our team at research@edexcelencia.org, and we'll be able to help you with any issues you might be having. So with that, it is my pleasure and honor to introduce our co-founder and CEO at Excelencia in Education, Deborah Santiago. Deborah, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you all for joining us for this conversation. And we purposely put together this list and this conversation to be engaging, not just about HSIs, but the quality and the opportunity we have before us in looking at our institutions that are disproportionately enrolling and graduating students overall. The title 30 years of HSIs is 30 years of funding HSIs. HSIs have existed longer than that, but we were cataloging the timing of financial support that started at the federal level with what was then Title III, Part A, Section 316 of the Higher Education Act, and 30 years later, as part of Title V, it's part of more federal funding and efforts and activities. It's not limited to that. And then improving access to quality for 30% is just an acknowledgement that the investment in Hispanic-serving institutions is one that invests in the institutions, and those that benefit are the students who are enrolled there. And you will see with our data that 30% of all undergraduates in this country are enrolled at HSIs today. And that's an important framing, as well as looking at where our Latino students are amongst all of them, and disproportionately at HSIs. So that's the framing. That's the reason for the 30%, 30 years and 30%. And looking at quality is a key part of what we're doing. I do want to take a step back and say, we are releasing today the latest list of Hispanic-serving institutions. I want to be clear that this list is based on the core element that defines Hispanic-serving institutions in federal legislation, and that is enrollment. It's 25% or more undergraduate full-time equivalent Hispanic enrollment for degree granting public or private institutions in the country. This is not a list of Title V eligibility, which requires additional criteria beyond enrollment to be able to access federal funds. That requires a two-step process where an institution has to apply for designation of Title V eligibility. Often people talk about being designated an HSI. There isn't a formal designation of HSI. There's designation of eligibility for applying to a Title V process, and the Department of Ed has a matrix that includes high enrollment of needy students, low educational and core expenditures as additional criteria. So I just want to be transparent about that, because the focus for us in putting this list together is identifying institutions that have a concentrated enrollment of Latino students, the youngest, fastest growing population in the overall US, and certainly in the college age field, to understand where are we concentrated, where are we going, and more importantly, what are institutions doing to ensure that they're meeting that social contract if a student chooses to enroll there, to make sure they're intentionally serving and graduating them. And that is the lens that Excelencia brings to the conversation, and the reason for looking at HSIs as we have for the last 30 plus years, and data and effort. So I share that with you. And then I also want to make sure that we're paying attention to this categorization of HSIs in this moment, where there have been questions or concerns of what does it mean in this current environment and context to be an Hispanic-serving institution. And I wanted to make sure that we focus on the fact that HSIs, that the program, the categorization, is one that brings opportunity to invest in institutional capacity, to create opportunity for access to quality. And these are not funds that are exclusive to any one population. We're looking at institutions that have a concentrated enrollment of Latino students amongst all. But as you'll see with our data, HSIs don't just enroll Hispanic students, and our focus is what are they doing to serve them amongst all, with the belief that if we can find ways to transform higher education to better serve these students that are representative of a very post-traditional student body, how does that not help the institution better serve all students? And we can look at our disaggregated data to tell us more about that, with a student-centered lens that tells us about the institutional commitment and intentionality in serving Hispanics overall. But HSIs and this funding that we're going to be taking a look at, we know that it's competitive. Institutions don't just get resources just because they've become an HSI. They still have to compete. So there's quality and competition and effort to improve institutional capacity, and that it's not exclusive to any one population, but it is core that this population amongst all is being served, in hopes that we can show what's possible for others that are looking to better serve this fast-growing population. So that's a little bit of the framing. And the last thing I'll share is that, and we'll get to this in a conversation with the 3 presidents of HSIs who are also SEAL certified institutions. And what does that mean? About 5 years ago, Excelencia, after working with institutions for about 20 years, created this independent certification of institutions that can show with their data, their evidence-based practices, and their leadership what they are doing to more intentionally serve Latino and all students. And that is an important way of looking not just at enrollment, but what it means to kind of deconstruct the S in HSI. What does it mean to serve students in a fundamental way that shows these institutions are taking accountability and responsibility for the students they are enrolling, and that there are practices and strategies and investments that others can learn from, so that more of our students are served well, and that institutions are responding to the students of today and tomorrow in a way that can make a significant difference. And for us, that's a key for the conversation we want to have. I'm going to hand it back to Emily, who can share with you some of the highlights of the research we are releasing today, and hopes that this sparks a continued conversation that we need to have about the strength and opportunities of our HSIs, about our institutions that are emerging HSIs, a construct that we created to try and track that pathway, and what we can do to better serve all of our students as we continue going forward. Emily.
Thank you so much, Deborah. We really appreciate hearing from you and those insights. I'd love to share just a little bit of data and our analysis with folks today, and then we'll really dive in with the panel. So I'll share just a few slides with you all today. First, as Deborah mentioned, this year marks 30 years of federal funding for HSIs. So looking a little bit at the timeline, in 1992, HSIs were first included in federal legislation in the Higher Education Act that year. And then 3 years later, in 1995, they received dedicated federal funding in what we know as the Developing Hispanic-Serving Institutions Program, or Title V, colloquially speaking. These funds are in an effort to build capacity, improve academic quality, and expand access for Latino students and also for other low-income students in higher education. And so looking now 30 years later in 2025, we see that over these 30 years, the funding for Hispanic-serving institutions through that Title V Part A has increased, but also the number of HSIs has grown. And we'll show you that in just a second. But with that, while most HSIs have applied for Title V funding, we have seen that less than 1 in 3 have been awarded these funds. So looking at the breadth and scope of this over the 30 years, as we mentioned, funding has increased for HSIs. So there's quite a few things on this visual, but if you all will indulge us for a second and focus on first, the blue line graph focuses on the dollar amounts, the funding through this program over the course of these 30 years. So as you can see, that blue line increasing over time. And then you'll see that the number of HSIs has also grown significantly as well. And that's represented by the bar graphs in the back, the bars in the background. And specifically, you'll see the total number of HSIs per year. And then in red is the subset of those that have actually received this funding over the 30 years. So lots to unpack from this visual, but really captures looking at it over this timeline. And so when we look at today, what do the data show? We see that over 1,000 institutions are either now HSIs or they're on their way to becoming a Hispanic serving institution. And these are what we call our emerging HSIs, or eHSIs for short. There are 602 HSIs and 418 emerging HSIs. The emerging HSI category, if you'll allow me for a moment, was a category created by Excelencia several years ago now. And it looks at institutions that have a Hispanic undergraduate full-time equivalent enrollment, so that FTE enrollment that's in the definition of an HSI, that are within the range of 15% to 24.9% of those Hispanic undergraduate FTE enrollment. So these are institutions that may, over time, eventually cross over that cusp and enter the threshold of an HSI, which is starting at 25%. Collectively, these are over 1,000 institutions, as you can see here. And then we also wanted to highlight that Excelencia has, since our founding, also been tracking a special subset of institutions. So these are subset of HSIs that offer graduate programs. And in this latest year, there are over 250 HSIs out there offering graduate programs for students. So seeing these over 600 institutions, these HSIs represent 20% of all colleges and universities in this country. And Deborah was talking a little bit about this in her remarks about the enrollment and graduation of the students that they have at these institutions. So these HSIs enroll and graduate 30% or over a third of all students and 2/3 of all Latino undergraduates in the nation. And this is for undergraduate students across the country. So of all Latinos. And then when we also look at other groups, we do see that these HSIs enroll a high concentration of students from various backgrounds. So not only of all students in the nation and of all Latinos, but HSIs are also enrolling 42% of all Asian students, 24% of all Black students, and 18% of all white students in this country today. So with that, that was just a very quick overview of all these fast facts of our analyses. Here's our main research page for you all to see all of our lists, but also fact book, fact sheets, infographics, lots of good information to share. And we welcome you all making use of that. It is available to the public as of earlier today. And with that, I will pass it back to Deborah, who will moderate our distinguished panel and introduce our speakers today. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Emily. We wanted to give you a little bit of a teaser of the analysis and information that Emily was referring to. 2 points that I just want to highlight again as we look to now talk to our leaders about this in more depth. The point is that HSIs enroll 30% of all undergraduates, even though they represent 20%, and graduate 31%. And the same way that 64% of all Latino students and graduate 66% of all Latino students. So we're seeing here that there is not just enrollment, but there is success in completion. And that is an important takeaway. So the story is not just one of enrollment, but it is about efforts and strategies that are actually graduating our students. And as we come into questions about value and investment of institutions and what's happening, knowing what institutions are doing intentionally is important. We know there are HSIs that are created because of demography and geography. So we're looking at institutions that are HSIs and serving based on intentionality and impact. And how do we understand that? How do we think about it? We've asked 3 colleagues to join us. All 3 are from Hispanic-Serving Institutions, and they are from SEAL certified institutions. And that for us is a way of institutions who have taken on responsibility for graduating the students that they enroll with quality, with awareness and support, and making sure that these students meet their own goals, and then in doing so enriches the country and ensuring our future overall. So if I could get our 3 panelists to join us for this conversation, I'd appreciate that. I think we have them here. First, we have President Saul Jimenez Sandoval, who is the president of Cal State University Fresno, Fresno State University. Thank you for joining us. 4-year institution, SEAL certified. And we also have President Michael Gutierrez from Hardell College, SEAL certified institution, both from California. And then our colleague, President Janine Janowski from Illinois, from Richard J. Daley College. Thank you all for making the time to join us for this conversation where we talk about enrollment. We've shared the data. That's something Excelencia has always done, but making sure that we're paying attention to what folks are doing in intentional efforts and strategies. And the 3 of you lead institutions and teams and are part of communities that are doing that work. So if I could start with you, President Jimenez Sandoval, as a SEAL certified institution, can you talk to us a little bit about how your institution is operationalizing that S in an HSI, what it means to intentionally serve students, especially amongst all students, your Hispanic students?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to highlight the ways in which we promote belonging at Fresno State. And belonging at Fresno State is done in a comprehensive way. We do it through the academic side of the house by really becoming aware of the classes that are stumping our students. Fresno State is about 56% Latinx, Latino, about 15% Asian, out of which the majority is Southeast Asian, and then about 18% white. And then the rest is from all over the world, really. So within this context, then, what we do is we focus on these challenging gateway classes the students take in their first and second year at Fresno State. These classes are very important because based on these classes, of course, the student has the self-assurance to move on to the next level, which is the major classes, whether it be in the STEM field or otherwise. And then the student also feels a sense of belonging within themselves. We found out, I'm going to give you some examples about this. We found out that 30% of all of our students for the past 30 years were failing Chemistry 1A. And Chemistry 1A is fundamental to the STEM fields. So within this, then, we thought to ourselves, what can we do about it? When we first started the conversation, the professors were saying to us, well, chemistry is tough. What do you expect? We're sort of like sorting the good from the bad, right? That really stuck within me, and I did not like the answer. Based on a lot of collaborative conversations, then we came up with supplemental instruction that was specific to Chemistry 1A. And now we are day in and day out saying to the students, if you go to supplemental instruction after you have gone to your lesson for the day for at least 12 times, you are guaranteed to pass the class with a 98% chance. And this is really where we are, right? For us, serving our population, our populations, I would say, is really intentional in the ways that the very specific foundational ways that they're being stumped right at the beginning. If a student is able to get an A or a B in Chemistry 1A, what happens to them? They have the self-assurance to say, I belong, I'm going to continue, and I'm gonna move on as a sophomore, junior, or senior, and then graduate and become a leader in our community. So we are intentional in a very intentional way, right? We're going for the basics of what is preventing our students from succeeding academically and from feeling a sense of belonging at Fresno State specifically.
Thank you. Very much appreciate that. That intentionality is seen through supporting, and some people call it gatekeeping courses, but making sure from the outset that they see some measures of success in being part of a community. And that's for Latino students and other all students that are there at Fresno State. Very much appreciate that. And we'll get back to this, because I do think that you're uncovering really concrete ways to give meaning to something that can feel very conceptual. Right? What does it mean to serve? Well, for many people, enrolling is serving, and you're making a distinction of what it means and the institutional responsibility to go deeper, which I appreciate. If I could turn to you, President Gutierrez, that what we started the conversation talking about here is 30 years of funding HSIs, and right now that's the Title V. We know that other federal agencies are also investing in HSIs and philanthropy as well. Could you talk to us a little bit about how Hartnell College has facilitated access to quality, which is the key part of institutional capacity, and how you've used your federal funding to improve educational opportunities for Latino and all students?
Thank you, Deborah, for the question, and do want to go back just a little bit in what Saul was saying, and talk about his authenticity to that, because right now we're 83% Latino, Latina at our college, and we have many students that transfer to Fresno State. In fact, my son is likely going to Fresno State. And so we just experienced that as a family in terms of this welcoming environment. And for Latinos, Latinas to be transferring to an institution like Fresno State and feel welcomed, all I hear from our employees, from our students, is that indeed is happening. And that is what's causing at least partly the success that welcoming environment snowballs and is creating the graduation rates from our students that are transferring to Fresno State. And so I just wanted to be able to bridge that from a personal experience, that what he's talking about is indeed authentic. And so to answer your question, Deborah, that concept of quality, the also earning the seal, and then funding, Title V funding, are all intertwined in the Hartnell experience, but not just ours, but many other colleges. And part of it begins with, by earning the seal, you need to have a strong institutional research department, because you have to create one, how do you know there's quality if you don't have any self-awareness? And so using that funding to help establish that research department, where then we could have data democratization, where our employees have access to that, our community can see how our students are doing, also be able to disaggregate that data so that we can see how our students are doing within our institution. And so that was one of the main things that we leveraged funding to ultimately get us to be able to even apply for the seal. And then what we've seen the past, I've been at Hartnell almost 3 years now, and what we've seen is, when I got there, we were at 76% Latinos, Latinas, and our enrollments during the pandemic had gone down. We eventually got it to, we stopped the bleeding, and then we started to increase, now to the point where we're at record enrollments, and we went from 76% Latino, Latina to 83%, which is hard to do within a short period of time. And the way we've done that is, again, leveraging the funding that we've received. And as new leaders, what I like to say is that we're archaeologists in ways. We have to investigate what is successful, not throw out everything that had been done before. And so what I discovered was something that we called Panther Prep, with the Panthers. And what I had seen is that we bring in about 1,100 students, high school seniors, to our different sites over a three-day period, and we were enrolling them. And we only have 1,900 first-time in college students. So to bring about 65% of your students, first-time in college students, to the campus, that was a really amazing thing that we were doing. So how could we then leverage that with the funding that we were getting through Title V, create success and create quality with that? So we've taken that as a way to engage our students. We invite the parents. So there's about now 300 or so parents that come, and we have sessions in English and Spanish. We start the degree plan or the ed planning for the students at that point. So they just don't register now. They have ed planning, and then they find out how they can connect to different parts of the college. And one of the, so TRIO, our EOPS programming, and what's critical is we have something called the Salinas Valley Promise Program. And the Promise programs are prominent nationwide, but many of the colleges focus on just the free tuition. And we certainly offer the free tuition for 2 years. But imagine a TRIO grant on steroids, and that's how we've leveraged some of our foundation dollars, some of our grant dollars in terms of building endowments. And so our students not only get the free tuition, but upon entry, they have to go to school full-time, but they get a computer or a book voucher, whatever their choice is. They get wraparound services for their entire 2 years. They get peer mentoring, and that's sort of the secret sauce to what we do, is they have that peer mentoring for the 2 years, and they have professional learning opportunities as well, and professional mentoring in their second year. And so what that's caused is now through the Salinas Valley Promise Program, we were at 300 3 years ago. We were at 1,400 of our first time in college students. So that's pretty close to scale, and they're all going to school full time. And we've seen our retention or persistence rates go from, on average, it's 73% for our college. It's 91% for our students in the Salinas Valley Promise Program. And so that's really transformational for the work that we're doing. And so how do we build off of that then? So now we have 1,000 more full-time students than we did 3 years ago. And so that's creating some of that success. So we're tying that up to some of the things like year-long scheduling. And so our students now, in 3 weeks, they'll register and they'll know their schedule in the fall and in the spring. And then to build that academic momentum, we're starting this summer. And so of course, we're going to do that next summer and the summers after that. We're modeling what Alamo Colleges did, which is the Hartnell College Summer Momentum Program. So students that enroll in the fall and the spring, they can qualify between 9 and 6 units for free in the summer, and then 3 units if they only registered in the fall, knowing that summer melt is the biggest time that we lose our students. So why not just keep them? We're not going to let them go. And so we're going to create that opportunity for them to build that academic momentum and create that sense of welcoming environment, that quality that we see. And so, because ultimately, as you said, it's really about, are our students that are in CTE programs earning livable wages and earning a credential, getting to livable wages? And if they're transfer students, are they really transferring? And not only are they really transferring, but are they earning a bachelor's degree so that they can get to a livable wage and create this sense of economic and social mobility? And just one more thing that I would like to add, we've used them to build our dual enrollment programming, but one thing that I think is also special to Hartnell is we've created our STEM research internship program, and that was created 17 years ago, and it's an opportunity for our students from our community, whether it's in Salinas, California, or outside of Salinas, in a heavy ag environment, to research symposium opportunities, paid internships, not volunteer, but all paid internships, where they can earn and learn and really create these professional opportunities for our students. Many of them, not all of them, but many of them coming from farm worker backgrounds, and creating that sense of opportunity for them, and expanding our career and transfer hub, linking them to these earn and learn opportunities, ultimately, again, to jobs or transfer.
I so appreciate that, because that not only the link to the 4-year with the team at Fresno State, but also you went from enrollment and recruitment all the way through completion and the workforce. And part of that is knowing who you're serving and then finding ways to serve them where they're at in constructive ways and offering those opportunities to get them what they need, which is a good job to support themselves, their families, and serve the community. So thank you. That was a very holistic way of looking at, and that you've used funding as a way to leverage those opportunities. And I think I heard you scale it up. So as you've done pilots, the funding can help support scale up in ways that serves more students overall. Really appreciate that as a way in framing. You kind of mentioned, and we see this pathway for the Seal of Excelencia as part of the quality element here. If I could turn to you, President Janowski, we've heard time and again when I interview presidents that the Seal of Excellency is not for the faint of heart, that it is a robust process. And it's a form of self-assessment. We don't compare one institution to another, it's compared to itself. So, how have you at Richard J. Daley College, how have you leveraged earning the Seal of Excelencia to advance your institution's work and make sure that your students are graduating and meeting their goals?
Dr. Santiago, thank you so much for that question and the opportunity to be here. And congratulations on the release today. When we started thinking about who we were as an HSI, and we started in what I'd like to call a fearless inventory. This was about 6 or 7 years ago. And we sat as a college and we said, absolutely, we're an HSI. And we're so proud of being an HSI. And we're Richard J. Daley College, which is in the southwest part of Chicago. We're part of the City Colleges of Chicago. And when we started that fearless inventory, I asked what I consider to be a very simple question. Who are students? Who are our students at Daley College? And it was troubling and also enlightening that many, whether it was faculty, whether it was staff, whether it was administrators, whether it was community members, we didn't have a thorough understanding as to who our students were. We knew the statistics. We knew that approximately 80% of our students identify as Latino. We know that the majority of them are from the southwest part of Chicago. We knew those, a lot of first-generation students, but we really didn't understand who our students were. So when we started that fearless inventory, I believe we were on our path to present and think about being a Latino serving institution, with that word serving being actionable from an intentional perspective. So again, we have about 80% of our students identify as Latino, about 10% are African American. And in understanding who our students are, we then got down the path of how do we serve them? And how do we serve them meeting the needs of them as individuals, but also our community needs? When we thought about that, we put together a formal research team. A number of individuals were committed to understanding and then moving forward in developing those high quality programs to make a difference in the lives, both from the student development and student services perspective, and also the academic and instruction perspective. But with that research team, we started to get quantitative data and qualitative data, because we really wanted to have the full picture as to who our students were and what might be those challenges or barriers that we can work with them to understand how they can be successful. We disaggregated the data to understand truly what were each individual pocket of students and what were those challenges. And working through that process, we realized that as an institution, we were providing incredible opportunities for our students, but we could do better. And that's where the point comes in. We could do better was thinking of the intentionality and understanding what those could possibly be. And using the incredible wisdom and outcomes of Excelencia as well as others to really think about what could that be. And in that journey, we were successful in earning the Seal of Excelencia. And that's a source of pride for us here at Daley College. But as I tell our team, as they remind me, our work is really just beginning. We have so much more work to do. In how do we intentionally serve the students that are here today, knowing that we're doing incredible things on the student services and student development side and instruction and community engagement, but we have to be very vigilant in monitoring and keeping track of what it is that we're doing. So we do that through key performance indicators, and we do that fearless inventory annually to understand what's the graduation rates of our students, what's the matriculation rates, what's the persistent rates, and all of those things, but also some other things. And this is, I believe, part of what has led us to be so successful, even though we have more work to do. We do student voice assessments. So we listen to the voices of our students. We very purposely do a comprehensive student voice research endeavor each summer to understand the issues. Because yes, I can understand that perhaps our fall to spring enrollment maybe has dipped a little bit. What are the reasons? How do we really get at the core reasons? And the data absolutely gives me a hint of that. But those student voices tell us it in a much different way. And that's where that sense of belonging and understanding what that means to folks is about. So how do we leverage the Seal of Excelencia? We leverage it among a number of different avenues. To our college campus, it has incredible meaning. Our students are proud to go to an HSI that has earned the Seal of Excelencia. And we're very purposeful in sharing that with them. When they come to tour to decide whether they want to come here, when they enroll here, and that initial meeting of orientation, and then each time we remind them. Why is it important? It's important so that they know the quality of education they're getting, the quality of student services they're getting, and that we're doing it intentionally, and they're our community. Also, in leveraging the Seal of Excelencia, we leverage it within Chicago and we leverage it within Illinois. It has opened many doors for us to engage with other institutions, engage with employers, engage with industry in not only sharing what we're doing, but also hearing from them what we could do better and how we can partner in doing that. And then it has opened the door for us nationally in a different way. You know, being here today with you is one of those evidence of opening the door nationally, but understanding from other SEAL earned institutions, what are their strengths, what are their benefits, what do they do that we can learn from, and then sharing what we do that they might be able to adapt to their institution. So earning the Seal of Excelencia is a path that is still ongoing. It's still ongoing because we have a commitment to be a high quality HSI. And I do believe that we're on our way. We're already there, but we have some more work to do. But also, how does it provide that opportunity for us to not only be the showcase, but also that we can help others grow in that way?
Great. Thank you so much. You know, I do appreciate that the journey that continues, right? The seal is not a one and done and not a recognition. It's that next step. And, you know, we require recertification every 3 years. Things change, progress. We want to check in on how institutions are doing and how we can help, but how other organizations and entities can as well. So I very much appreciate all three of you talking about your institutions with a concrete example of what you're doing to be intentional, and from the start and gatekeeping courses, looking at the pathway in toto from recruitment through completion in workforce, and using funds to leverage that, and then the visibility and attention. But more importantly, I think what I heard was this self-assessment and understanding who your students are, how to serve them well, and continually look at quantitative and qualitative data to engage with those students to make sure you're meeting the needs they have in their community. Very much appreciate that from each of you. I know it's just scratching the surface of the things you're doing and the stories you can tell us about influence and impact and the challenges, because we're talking about the things that are working, but we know that this is not done in a vacuum and there's a lot going on. So in that same vein, we know we're in an environment and space where there are questions about the value of higher education, the return on investment, especially amongst our communities of color and others, and that we're hearing that not everybody needs to go to college. We're also hearing increasing challenges to being race conscious, which, you know, from Excelencia's perspective, that it's not to the necessary exclusion of others, but making sure we are aware of who is going, how they're going, how we can serve them well. And that's our commitment, is we bring a Latino lens to make sure we're educating Latino and all. So I guess I would ask each one of you to share with us a little perspective about, in this environment where there is concern about being race conscious. I mean, we've heard people say, can we even say Latino? How do you, in your leadership role, make sure your institutional efforts to increase Latino student success also improve success for all students that are enrolled at your institution? And maybe I'll start with you, Saul, if you don't mind.
Sure, I'd be glad to take on that question. I think fundamentally speaking, in California, we have Prop 209, and we have been abiding by Prop 209, which stipulates that we can neither privilege nor can we exclude any one specific demographic from any of our services that we have on our campus. And we abide by that in a very, very clear way. Nor do we hire based on any type of quota as well. We hire the best because they are the best in that case. So with that on the table, I think I want to talk about how do you create an ecosystem that both celebrates as well as welcomes your students from all backgrounds as well. At Fresno State, I have a booth. There are booths that line up the quad that lead up to the library, and I have a booth there, and I'm there twice a month for an entire hour. To go back to what Janine was saying before, I need to know my students, and I need to know all of my students, which includes my ag students. I'm very much ag, it's just like Michael is. It's a very strongly ag region. We produce 25% of the nation's food within my region. So I need to know what is happening with my ag students. I need to know what is happening with my conservative students. How can I serve them in all of this? All of this to say the following: based on the processes and based on the initiatives that I have implemented at Fresno State, I have listened to my students and I have listened to the needs of my students comprehensively. We have 15% Asian American students at Fresno State. How can I make this campus more welcoming to them while not privileging and while not excluding anyone? So I've implemented, for example, with my Southeast Asian students, the Hmong New Year. We never celebrated it before, even though we have the second largest population of Hmong Americans in the entire country. So in having the Hmong New Year at Fresno State, what happens? I'm building a bridge between the community and Fresno State to say, this is your university. The more we educate from this demographic, the stronger the region comprehensively becomes in a very concrete way. With other demographics, I reach out very concretely to say, I'm here for you. I have begun to welcome the transfer students from community colleges and cohorts, right, from the region. So I went, for example, the other day to Madera Community College, and I welcomed all like 80-something students to Fresno State. And at the end of my speech, I told them what? I'm here for you. You are my students. Because after you graduate from Fresno State, what happens? 80% of you will stay in the region. So for me, having grown up in this region, is not just this theoretical job that I have that, I graduate students and then that's the end of that. No, 80% stay here. Therefore, the more I'm able to invest, the more I'm able to reach out to all of my students and say, I'm your champion. If you have issues with classes, with housing, with financial aid, whatever else, I will go to bat for you, regardless of your background, right? So within this, then, it's being intentional by being approachable more than anything. It's being intentional by celebrating the histories we have in the Valley. We're the 9th most diverse city in all of the US. I have to be very keen on saying, these are my demographics. I'm going to celebrate them intentionally by sharing the histories that these demographics have in common as building the American dream together here in the Valley moving forward.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. But Michael, I'll go to you, President Gutierrez. We're talking here about HSIs, Latino student success, and that it's not to the exclusion of others, but it is making sure that students are served well. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that means for you at Hartnell? How do you ensure that while you're doing this work?
Sure, and I think we can go back to what one of the slides was saying historically from the 90s when the funding was originating, when HSIs were being created as an official designation from the Department of Ed. And if you recall, it was about building the capacity of the institution, not individuals. And so if we go back to that, everything that we do is as an institution. And an example of that, because Saul said everything in terms of that high touch, high feel, which is critical for what we do. So not to replicate or duplicate that, if we think about what's being asked of us of serving Latinos and then all our students, is also doing it at scale. And where do we hire most of our employees? Well, we take them from other colleges or universities, but all of them have been at universities, our colleges, universities, grad school, and quite frankly, they need to be reprogrammed because they don't learn how to do things at scale. They actually learn how to do the opposite, which is doing things very programmatically. And it's not that they don't have the skills, because they do have the right skills, but it's this professional development that we need to develop at our institutions to do a little bit of that reprogramming so that things can be done at scale to serve Latinos and Latinas at scale. At scale for Hartnell, it's 83%. That's almost the entire population. But everything we do is also to serve all students, because just philosophically, we are increasing the capacity to serve and then also to lead them from servingness to positive student outcome.
Absolutely. Thank you. So in serving Latino students, you're transforming and can serve others better as well. That's a critical story. Janine, from your perspective, how do your institutional efforts to increase Latino student success improve success for all of your students?
Absolutely. So very much what was shared, we at Daly College do very similar. So absolutely focusing on who are our students. And then from that lens, what is a service that will enhance their journey so they can reach what they were set here to reach. And when we think about this, we as a college try to interact with our students and understand and develop programs as well as operations on a number of levels. We think about our students as a body of students, but we also think about each of the individuals, and that's really crucial. So the sense of belonging not only is for the students, but it's also for the faculty and staff. And with the faculty and staff having a sense of belonging and understanding, serving Latino students and serving all students at Daly College, that very much so helps them to engage and our students to engage in each one of them. When we do that, it's impactful and it makes a difference. So in serving Latinos, we're serving all students. And we do that by identifying them as a body, all the students at Daly, but equally important is every one of them separately as the individuals that they are. So how do we do that? For the sense of belonging, getting to know them as individuals and realizing that this is a particular student at Daly College, this is their dream, and this is how we can connect them to meet that dream. That's very crucial, and that's the stance that we take, that I believe is serving the students of Daly College positively for their impact.
Yeah, thank you. We know that this is hard work. You're talking about getting to know your students and making sure you meet them where they're at and serving them well. This is this construct that is HSI was started more than 30 years ago, 33 plus years ago, from the community and led to federal legislation and getting investment and support to complement. We know that even if you get a Title V grant or something from the Department of Ed, it's a very small amount of your overall budget, and yet it's being leveraged in ways that can transition and inform some of your work and allow you to pilot and try things a little bit differently. And that's really important as we think about then how do we capture that and tell that story for others that are interested, because this is a growing population, right? And we're getting calls from folks in Tennessee and Arkansas and Oklahoma, Virginia, where they're saying, we see this is the growth population. How do we serve these students? And I think that takes a community that's committed. If you see these students and are committed to serving them, that is a different framing than we often think about just enrolling them overall. And so appreciate this perspective that you're sharing. I know that we probably have some questions. We could probably continue talking to you all because of your leadership, and we know you're doing so many things. But I would ask, Emily, is there a question or two from those that are listening that we might be able to ask our colleagues in the 5 or 6 minutes we have left before we wrap up?
Sure. Thank you, Deborah, and to our panel. We got quite a few questions. There was one I did see, if you all could talk about what indicators have you found as most valuable for measuring progress for your students, Latino and others on your campuses? And of particular interest, they're also curious if you've noticed any shifts in the needs of your students that are in the younger generations now, compared to your earlier cohorts. So a two-parter there.
Why don't we start with the first
Yeah.
one, and then I know there are more questions. We probably will be able to get back to those who've attended. We have your information to get you other answers. But looking at indicators that I know you all mentioned some. I appreciate all of you mentioned some of your data, which shows you're paying attention to that. But indicators that are relevant for you as you look at the resilience, the persistence of your students, and how your institution is retaining them.
Yeah, I'll start. Absolutely. So we do what we typically think of as key performance indicators. How many credits were earned in the first semester? How many were attempted? How many earned? Fall to spring enrollment. And those are really important for us to understand the progression of the students as they go through their course of study. But what we have found is there are some other things that are crucial that leads to, or we believe is leading to, the understanding of the success and the tempo in which they are successful. Let me give you one example. What we all have found is engagement in the college community seems to be a predictor of persistence for students and the success of students. So how do you measure engagement in the college community? What we have been doing is thinking about what kind of groups are they involved in? Have they accessed the tutoring center? Have they accessed career services? Are they a member of a student club? Do they attend on events on campus? And we're starting to convalesce around that type of assessment to understand engagement and how important that is for the persistence of students. We take the perspective of, yes, we know many students take only online classes, but we still have a significant percentage of our students that come for in-person classes. And we're coming to realize the longer the student stays after a class or before the class seems to be a strong predictor of their success in moving forward. So it's those engagements and belonging issues that is, from a quantitative perspective, that's starting to give us some insight into our KPIs, our key performance indicators, and the success and the journeys for the students.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I know that our other presidents also have lots of those measures and indicators. I want to be sensitive to where we are with time, and note that these institutions are 3 examples of leaders and institutions that have taken this charge seriously, have indicators, have data, have evidence-based practices, have structural strategic plans and efforts to serve these students well. These 3 leaders are part of 45 institutions across the country. 7% of HSIs have earned the Seal of Excelencia. More importantly, they are resources for those that are interested in making sure they can be much more intentional in serving Hispanic students amongst all students, and help us in serving post-traditional students in a more robust way. And I think that's not insignificant. The research that we've released today is an indicator at the national level of not just the concentrated enrollment of Latino students, but also the concentrated effort by a subset of those institutions that are committed to doing more and making sure that they fulfill that commitment to the students that they're enrolling. It answers the question of taking responsibility for who you're serving and serving them well. And we've heard that from all 3 of our presidents, and thinking about that overall. It also creates an opportunity for us to dig deeper. There is no excuse for inaction. These are institutions that are showing can be done. Our 3 institutions, they've all received different levels of funding and support for being HSIs, but they're getting funding in small measure compared to the level of work they're doing, and they're disproportionately enrolling and graduating. How do we think about that, and how are we investing in those efforts and opportunities is one for us at Excelencia, we're looking at how we can measure, but also more importantly, bring a community of common cause together, such as these 3 presidents that are able to talk about what they're doing, lean on teams and community to do so. I think that's the opportunity before us. In times when we talk about who our students are, the reality is Latinos are the growth population in higher education of large measure. And doing well and right by these students is going to influence and impact the structural change that we need to see in higher ed and the students who are being successful in that space for our workforce and economy. And I'm so grateful for the 3 presidents who've chosen to take this time, but share just a little bit. I hope you will follow up. There's a lot of information about these individual institutions, these leaders, their practices, what's scalable, as was mentioned earlier, but also what's replicable, and not allow ourselves to be limited by what's currently existed. Sometimes innovation is serving a population that hasn't been served, and sometimes it is making sure we're paying attention to what's possible and being part of a community that's sharing and learning from each other. And these presidents and their institutions are examples of that. And I know at Excelencia, we're grateful to listen and learn from them as we try to translate elements of this that can inform a broader policy conversation. So thank you all for taking this time. I hope our audience will listen and follow up with these institutions. Our team is happy to do so. Please take a look at the data. While they are just a framing element here, it's important we're paying attention to the institutions that are asset-based and making a constructive, positive difference for our students today, and show what's possible for any institution in this country that wants to make sure Latino and all students are served well. So thank you for your time. Thank you, President Jimenez Sandoval, President Gutierrez, President Janowski. Thank you all for listening in on us. We hope you will follow up and we continue doing this hard work together. Thank you all. Thank you all.